for today, we have a potential severe weather outbreak occurring in portions of the United States as well as Canada. Yes, we are going to be covering Canada today, as I do want to try and start to cover Canada in my forecasts because typically, whenever you see weather channels do it, they don't really actually cover Canada and only portions of the US. So today, we're going to be making a weather forecasting video about both the US and as well as Canada. So for today, July 18th, 2026, we have an enhanced risk of severe weather for portions of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast areas. Pretty much most areas in Pennsylvania, southern New York, northern Ohio, most of Maryland, all of New Jersey, and Delaware is going to be in the orange for an enhanced risk of severe weather. So really, if you live anywhere in the orange, you are most likely to be experiencing some sort of severe weather, whether if it's going to be wind, hail, or tornado. Most likely, and what I mean by that, like you'll at least have a thunderstorm, possibly like a severe thunderstorm. Then we also have a very big slight risk for any areas in the yellow, all the way down to the Carolinas, to the Ohio Valley, all over the Great Lakes, really Erie and Ontario, and then also portions of New England as well. We also do have a slight risk over here in Montana as well, as for some portions of Montana anywhere in the yellow. Biggest risk for today is going to be our wind risk, which we do have a 45% chance of. So really, I'm stating that anybody in the pink most likely is going to be experiencing some sort of wind threat within this area. Really, though, it's like a 50-50 shot that you could have 60-mile-per-hour winds. Some areas could get up to 40, 50 miles an hour, the rest. But if you do live in the pink, you're going to have some sort of wind threat, but have a 50-50 chance of having severe wind threat, having 60-mile-per-hour gust or over. In the red, it's 30%, so you might have a one-third chance of seeing anything in the red. Yellow, 15%, so could be some possible scattered areas in the yellow. Red possibly could happen. Pink, I would say really kind of like 50-50, most likely probably would happen to you if you live in the pink. For Montana, we do have a 15% anywhere within the yellow, also with the categorical 1 risk, so could have a couple of 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. Really, whenever they have the dotted lines, categorical wind threat, it's really for things that like we could have 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts. Over back on the East Coast, I could see some 70 mile per hour winds being possible. We could have an isolated one or two 80 mile an hour possible, but we don't really have a category 1 issued by the SPC, so that could be different for the most part. For the tornado threat, which is our next threat, really going to be a combined area. Really, areas in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland could be seeing a couple of possible tornadoes. Really, areas along the Pennsylvania New Jersey border also have a category 1 chance where we do see those tornado watches in effect. So really areas around Pennsylvania and New Jersey, do beware for a potential tornado threat. Definitely embedded tornadoes is what's going to be happening for today, July 18, 2026. And then for the 2% areas, could have an isolated tornado or two, but really we're going to be looking for today is areas like central New York, central Pennsylvania, like all of Delaware, all of New Jersey, but we will be keeping an eye on that for sure, or you do need to be keeping an eye on that and stay prepared for weather events like this. We also do not have a threat for tornado as well as Montana. The hail threat really isn't going to be an issue today. If we do see hail, most likely it'll be up to quarter-sized hail possible anywhere in the brown. It is for both areas, also in Montana and as well as Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. For tomorrow, July 19, 2026, we have a slight risk of severe weather for areas in North Dakota and northern Minnesota. Also have one for eastern North Carolina and a little bit of southern Virginia around, Virginia Beach and south of Richmond. Uh, for the wind threats could be our biggest threat, which both areas of slight risk anywhere in the yellow could have scattered wind threats possible in any of the yellows. Could have been isolated in any of the brown areas that you see that we're in. Then for the tornado threat, we do not have one at all. Could maybe be seeing an isolated one potentially in North Carolina. I mean, it's less than a 2%, but it's not zero, I would say, for the most part. So keep an eye on that because sometimes, whenever they don't say there is one, there always could be one potentially, I would say. Just to make sure about that. Then for the hail threat, really nothing. It's just gonna be could have like an isolated hail threat here and there for North Dakota and northern Minnesota, as well as some areas of the border of Montana and Wyoming as well. For July 20th, 2026, we have a slight risk of severe weather for areas across the upper peninsula of Michigan, all of Wisconsin, areas in southeastern Minnesota, central and eastern Iowa, and northern Illinois. I would say most likely for uh they haven't released it yet, but for July 20th, I would say the wind threat, which is a common threat you see in the Midwest, would be our biggest threat. Also, potentially could have a 5% tornado threat as well. That could be possible, and we could see that as well. We are going to be keeping an eye on that, though. And then for July 21st, rather, we have a slight risk of severe weather across the Ohio Valley and as well as Mid-Atlantic. We'll be keeping an eye on this as well as we are still a couple of days out, so things can still change. Same thing on July 22nd. We also do have a slight risk in effect for areas from the Carolinas up to around Philly, Baltimore, and Washington. We'll also keep an eye on that as we are still days out from the actual event itself. July 18, 2026, for today, we have an extreme risk of severe weather for areas east of Edmonton, Alberta, and Canada. Could see some winds up to 130 kilometers an hour, up to 80 mile per hour. Could have some hail up to quarter sized possible. Quarter like the Canadian coin. It's pretty much the same size as the US coin. We also do have a bit of a tornado risk as well for this area, but I would say really tornado and wind threat will be the biggest problem. Really anywhere east of Edmonton and Alberta. We also do have a high risk in Canada, which is different than the US. Extreme risk is pretty much the US's version of a high risk. High risk in Canada is like the version of enhanced risk, I would say, for the US. But areas in eastern Alberta and western Saskatchewan could see, winds up to probably around 120 kilometers an hour. You can see here up to 70 miles per hour. Hail could be up to, about a quarter again. Could have a lot of rain this time as well. And we do have a risk for tornadoes. Also, for areas in southern Ontario, between Michigan and New York, we also do have a risk over here. So areas along Lake Erie are going to be the biggest threat. Areas also south of Toronto. Toronto itself could be in a moderate risk. So we do got to be keeping an eye as well for areas in southern Ontario, eastern Alberta, and western Saskatchewan for Canada. Going into tomorrow morning, so July 19, 2026 in the morning, really just have a moderate risk for areas in Saskatchewan. So could have some winds, heavy rainfalls possible. We really won't have a tornado threat, but we could have some small hail, very small hail, and some winds moving through Saskatchewan. Going through the afternoon of July 19th, we do have a high risk for areas for west of Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, areas pretty much west, and also along the border of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Anywhere in the orange, you can be seeing a high risk. Then for July 20th, just having a moderate risk for Western Ontario, as we did have a slight risk also on the 20th, extend down from Minnesota down into Iowa. So that pretty much will be in the same key, same role. I will go ahead and give the timing for these storms for now. So across right now, this is the latest model run from the HRRR17Z model or the 1 o'clock model. 1 p.m. Eastern time model. Right now, as we can see, is that we have a bunch of storms anywhere from Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. As we go through kind of into the evening, we're going to be seeing that we could have a possible line of thunderstorms develop across Pennsylvania and New York. Any of these red boxes that you see could be possible, like wind threat, hail threats, possibly tornado threats as well. As we kind of get through to the overnight, we will see that late evening around like 8, 9, you can see that they start to head to areas in around New York City, going through central Pennsylvania, through Ohio. Pretty much after we get into midnight, this is when our storms will start to collapse. This will then move into areas in the Ohio River Valley, Mason-Dixon line, and then this pretty much will move through, and then this is where we'll see our next setup, which unfortunately isn't shown here right now, but we will have our next setup across the Carolinas for tomorrow, July 19th. All right, this is now going to be the timing from the wrap model. This is the 17Z or 1 p.m. Eastern model. So as I'm making this, we could see that across areas in Alberta and Saskatchewan is that the problem with the wrap model is that it's not as detailed, but it kind of can give us an idea. So kind of moving on already in the evening time, we do have some thunderstorms across eastern Alberta and the western Saskatchewan. Kind of moving through overnight though, this is where we could see a lot of our rain threat being in effect as we have some rain moving over British Columbia, moving into Alberta and as well as Saskatchewan, and we could see that that rain with the low pressure system, it could be dumping a lot of rain, so we could have rain up to 8 centimeters possible, or an inch or two possible in areas in eastern Alberta and western Saskatchewan. The model doesn't really continue after this, but it will. This then continues on to moving on to east, through Saskatchewan into Ontario. So we could have some excessive rain and flooding potentially moving across southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba, into Western Ontario. Speaking about flash flooding and excessive rainfall, we do have a slight risk of flooding across two areas. One down here, kind of in the southwest in the deserts, where we start to see some monsoon rain across southern Utah and a lot of areas in Mexico, southern New Mexico, and as well as western Texas. We also do have an area over here where we're seeing our enhanced risk of severe weather for a lot of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, are in areas around New York City, all of Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Could have some flooding possible in any of these areas in the yellow. Could have an isolated flooding incident or two across the green in both areas or any of these areas. For tomorrow, July 19, 2026, the monsoon rain continues for areas in the southwest, anywhere in the yellow and green. Going into July 20th, again, same situation. Areas in Arizona and New Mexico could have some monsoon rain possible. And so flooding could definitely turn into a problem in any areas in the yellow over the next couple of days. And that's something that, if you do live out here, that you do need to keep an eye on over the next couple of days. All right, next thing we're going to be talking about is the temperature probability across the U.S. for the next week or so. So for the latest outlook that we are seeing currently, areas in around the North Ohio River Valley into the northeast, anywhere in the blue, we're most likely to be seeing below average temperatures. Anywhere else in the red, orange, gonna most likely be above average for temperatures over the next week or so. Going into the next 2 weeks, we can see that Again, most areas are going to be above average. In some areas over in the northeast could be a little bit below average to near normal for temperatures. Going on within the next week for precipitation, most of the United States is expected to be a little bit above precipitation wise. Maybe areas in and around Texas, southern Texas could be a little bit below average. For the most part, we should be just around normal to a little bit above normal for precipitation. Then going into the next week, most of the U.S. is expected to be around normal for precipitation. All right, anyways, that's going to be the end of my weather talk for Hunt Weather today. So if you guys like to see another video or short, make sure you guys considering liking or subscribing the content that I do. It does support me. Also, sharing this with other people is also going to be really important, as I do like what I do for the weather, and I do hope to grow, continue in the future. So if you do potentially consider liking and subscribing, and also comment on any suggestions on what I should do, and also covering my first Canada risk for today, and I hope to do more of those in the future. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.